Approaches to research in geography through inductive and deductive. So this inductive and deductive way of or approaches to research, this is not just exclusive to geography only. This is a type of research. These are parts of research or approaches to research which is common to other subjects as well. So you can also say that this is approaches to research through inductive and deductive approaches. Now, while we start with this, it is very important to know what is a hypothesis, because this word hypothesis, this will come up in this class more than once. So it is important that you know that what exactly do we mean by a hypothesis. So what is a hypothesis? It is actually an idea, an idea. So what sort of idea? That idea that the researcher sets as the goal of the study. So this is just this is not a theory. Hypothesis is not a theory. It is just an idea, and this idea the researchers thinks sets as the main aim of the study. And this main aim of the study or this goal of the study, the researcher or the person who is going to research, he will examine this idea, this aim of the study, and while examining it, he will either find that this idea is right or this idea is wrong according to his research, according to what he has done his research. So, according, if it is right, then he will just replace that idea as a theory, and if it is wrong, then that idea will be negated, will be discarded. So hypothesis is an idea. So this idea is what this idea is taken by the researcher as the goal of the study, as the aim of the study, and this is examined. And then, if found, according to the examination, according to the research, if it is found suitable by his research, then it is taken as a theory. Like, for example, I have given an example over here. Like students, this is an hypothesis, this is not a theory. So students attending online classes or students attending regular classes, they perform better than the students not attending classes. So this is a hypothesis. This has to be examined. This has to be tested. Now, if found that yes, on testing, that yes, this is right, then we can take this as a theory. Until and unless this is not accepted, this is not tested, this is a hypothesis. So I hope till now things are clear that what is an hypothesis. So a hypothesis is never a theory. Now, as like in the cover slide, we have seen that there are two approaches to research. One is deductive and one is inductive. So what do we mean by the deductive thought or deductive approach? So in deductive approach, it starts from general to specific ideas, or from general ideas to some specific ideas. And while doing this, deductive approach always starts the work by deciding the theory. So once the theory is decided, and once the theory is it is decided, then the objectives, the methodologies are done according to the theory. So once the theory is decided, then a specific hypothesis is fixed, and based upon the hypothesis is tested, and if it is found okay or not okay, whatever it is, if it is tested, and based upon that conclusions are drawn. Now let us see about inductive way of thought. Now in inductive, so before starting inductive, once again I would like to say about the deductive one. See over here, so deductive starts with what? Starts with a theory, and then it ends with the conclusion. But in inductive, it does not have a theory. Its end result is a theory. It starts with examples or observations, The end result is theory. In the previous one, we saw that it starts with a theory. Here, it starts with observations, and the end result is a theory. I will give you examples of this later on. So, in this inductive way, it starts with the proposition of observation. So once it is observed, then a pattern is derived, and based upon the observation, the end result is what? Either you conform to the pattern or you reject the pattern. So once you confirm or reject whatever you do, then comes the ultimate result, that is the theory. So here it is just the opposite of deductive way of thought. Now let us see some other differences of inductive and deductive. So this is based upon what? Hypothesis and theory. So in the inductive way, first of all, these two are inductive and these two are deductive. So in the inductive way, inductive approach, this does not have any place of hypothesis. So, when there is no hypothesis, just remember what I had told you about hypothesis. Hypothesis is what? It's an aim. Hypothesis is just an idea, and the researcher works towards that idea, towards that aim. So, since when you don't have a hypothesis, that means you don't have any fixed aim or you don't have any fixed goal which you need to prove, exactly that fixed goal you need to prove. So when the researcher does not have any fixed goal or a fixed aim towards which he has to go, that means the researcher is free to alter his direction of the study. That means he is free to examine the various other facets also, the various other angles also. He is free to examine various other angles, not only the angle that uh, he has to go towards, not only a specific kind of an angle, not only a specific kind of a goal. Because he does not have any specific goal, because he does not have any specific research aim, because he does not have any specific idea which he needs to prove, that is why this researcher is free to alter his direction of study, because he does not have any particular fixed direction of study. So he can check and examine various multifaceted ideas. And this inductive is concerned with what? Ultimately, it is concerned with building new theory. But in deductive, let us see what happens. Since it starts with the hypothesis itself, since it starts with the hypothesis itself, so that means he has got a fixed aim of study. He has got a fixed goal towards which he needs to study. So the researcher is cannot he cannot alter his direction of study. He has to study only to prove that hypothesis. He has to study only towards that aim, because he is testing an existing theory. So I will give you an example over here. Supposing you take the all of us here geographer, we know that with altitude there is a difference of temperature. Like with altitude, it is inversely proportional. That is, with rise in altitude, there is a decrease in temperature. This is a theory. So when this is a theory, for example, we are going from the deductive point of view, we already know that this theory is there, that there is a negative correlation between altitude and temperature. So if we are going from the deductive point of view, then we will start with this particular, this is called normal lapse rate. So we will start from this hypothesis itself, from this normal lapse rate. And we cannot, when we are going to maybe study about altitude and temperature, we cannot alter our direction of study. Our study will be based upon the normal lapse rate. We cannot go beyond this normal lapse rate. So supposing if we are trying to study why there is no, or like there is another theory that with increasing altitude, the pressure also decreases, air pressure also decreases. So supposing we find that there is a decrease of oxygen, we find a problem in breathing. in the as we maybe someone is climbing the peaks, climbing the Himalayas, and that person is having some breathing problem. So, if it goes by the deductive point of view, then already we will test the already hypothesis. What hypothesis? That is, there is a decrease of air pressure with altitude. So we will test that, okay, because there is a decrease of air pressure because of altitude, that is why we are facing this oxygen problem. But if we go by the inductive way of thought, then the inductive approach is what? It does not have any hypothesis, it just has observations. For example, much before this theory of inverse or normal lapse rate has come up, so people during that time they did not have this normal lapse rate. So during that time, what had happened? They were just having various observations, and based upon the observations, they came upon the theory that of the normal lapse rate. So this is the difference between inductive and deductive. For one, the end result is the theory, and for the other, the starting result is the theory itself, and it goes on to test the theory. So this is about hypothesis and theory. Now let us see some other differences based upon structure, sample size, etc. So based upon this, we see that in inductive, it is less structured. Why? Because there is no particular goal. Since there is no particular goal, there is no particular aim, so you don't have any particular methodology. But over here, because there is a particular aim, there's a particular goal which you need to prove or disapprove. So over here, you find a fixed set of methodologies. And with these fixed set of methodologies, with these fixed set of steps, you have to derive your research. When you don't have a particular fixed goal, fixed aim, and you do a multifaceted research, that is not possible for a big project. It can be possible for a small project that you are trying various kinds of observations. For example, if you want to study about one particular animal in the animal kingdom, you can do so by observing the behavioral characteristics of that particular animal. But if you want to do the behavioral characteristics of the entire animal kingdom, then that won't be possible. If you go on and on with various examinations and observations, that is not possible. So for large sample data sample project, inductive is not possible. Then comes a deductive way of thought, when you already have a theory and you go on to prove or disapprove the theory. Because here small projects are possible, so depth, when you have small a limited amount of research, then you can easily do depth analysis. You can go into much more depth into that research. But over here, since you are doing for a huge amount of sample, so you cannot do a depth analysis. You cannot go into the depth of each and every animal. You cannot study in depth the behavior of each and every animal of the animal kingdom. So this is the about. So this is the approach for both. So over here you see in deductive, it is a top down. So in deductive, what happens? The theory is already there. Based upon the theory, the hypothesis is made. Based upon the hypothesis, observations are done. Based upon the observation, that is testing of the hypothesis, through observation, what you do, you test the hypothesis. Based upon the observation, you either confirm this theory or you reject the theory. So this is a top down. Here, this is a bottom up. Why bottom up is inductive? Because over here, you have first the observations. Based upon the observations, there is a fixed pattern which you try to derive from the observations. Based on this pattern, you derive a hypothesis. Based upon this hypothesis, then comes a theory. So it is just the opposite of the deductive. So it is called the bottom up in inductive. This is the cycle of deductive and inductive research. This is in short actually of what I have said just now. So the red indicates the deductive. So first the theory is there already, and in deductive Based upon the theory, hypothesis is created and then it is tested through empirical observations. These observations becomes the basis of, so here it ends. And these empirical observations then become the start of the inductive process. It is observed, and based upon the observations, hypothesis is made, and based upon that, the theory is derived. So these are the various differences of the deductive and the inductive approach. First of all, in the deductive, it aims at what? It aims at testing the existing theories. Already the theory is there. But here in inductive, it is a generation of new theory. New theories are generated from what? From the various data. This begins with a hypothesis, just like you are seeing till now. This begins with a hypothesis. Over here, there are various research questions which are answered through observations, through patterns, and then the ultimate result is obtained. This emphasizes on causes. Here, it emphasizes more on observations, on new phenomena, on research phenomena which had occurred previously. This is a continuous process. And here it is, this approach is meant more for building the theory later on at a later stage. This method is much more simple, but it is confined to some predetermined theory. This process, this is from particular to general. This studies the various events as it occurs. So these are the various differences of these two, of deductive and inductive approaches. Now, let me give you an example. So, whatever I have been saying you till now, maybe it is more theoretical. So, now you will understand it more easily. Now, when I give you an example. So, let us take one case in which, just like I have written the heading, role of education in poverty of a region. Role of education in poverty of a region. Now, see the title. It does not say that whether education has a positive or a negative relation. This is just, it is just a research idea to understand the role of education in the poverty of a region. So, how will an inductive researcher start with these statements? So, what he will do is that since inductive, they do not have a theory, so what it has, it starts with observations, as I have told before also. So the first step for the inductive researcher will be to understand the role of education in poverty of a region, will be to observe the study area. That will be the first step. While he is observing the study area, what he will do, that person will start collecting information about the two parameters. What are the two parameters? Education and poverty. So he will first observe the study area for these two parameters. What are the parameters? He will start collecting information related to poverty and related to education through field survey. Once that is done, then he will assemble the information and try to find out whether there is a fixed pattern to the information that he has found out. He will try to find out whether there is a fixed pattern to this to the various information that he has derived based upon whatever pattern. So now first he has done what? He has observed. Second, he has done what? Based upon his observation of poverty and education, he has tried to derive some pattern. Based upon this, he will come up upon a hypothesis. Now, read this hypothesis carefully. What this is? The hypothesis is level of education is related to the level of poverty. Nowhere the inductive researcher says that uh, this level of education is uh, inversely related, it is negatively related, it is positively related. Nowhere he is saying that. He is just saying that yes, the level of education is related to the level of poverty. So he is not making any sort of decision over here. He is not saying that yes, level of education, if education is more, poverty is less, or vice versa. He is not, he is just saying that the level of education is related to the level of poverty. Next, now supposing based upon his various information, based upon his pattern, suppose he finds out that poor population have low education. This is just suppose. He just finds out that poor population have low education. So based upon this, his ultimate conclusion will be a theory. His ultimate conclusion, so inductive, the ultimate result is a theory. What is the theory? That low level of education results to high level of poverty. So here comes, at last comes the theory. Based upon all these observations, pattern finding, hypothesis, then comes the, at last comes the theory. Now let us see about the deductive. The statement is the same, that is role of education in poverty of a region. So first he, what he will do, deductive, first he will start looking for whatever are the existing theories on the statement on poverty or education. He will start finding out theories, because as I had told before, the deductive approach starts with a theory first. Inductive starts with observations, last is theory. Here, theory is first. So, first they will start looking for theory about the education, about poverty level, etc. Once that is done, then the researcher will then narrow it down to hypothesis. Now see the hypothesis carefully. Hypothesis says what? Low level of education results in high level of poverty. So already the theory is made. Already the decision is made. Previously, what was the hypothesis? Previously, in inductive, the hypothesis was that a there is a relation of education with poverty. It did not say what kind of relation, but here already the ultimate decision is made. What is the decision? The decision is the hypothesis. What? That is low level of education results in high level of poverty. So this theory is already made. So based upon the already made theory, next he will start collecting field observations based upon this theory which has already been made. Now, based upon this analysis, the researcher will test the hypothesis, that is the theory, that low level of education results in high level of poverty. And based upon the field data, then, or based upon the testing, then he will come up to the ultimate conclusion whether or not this is true or this is false based upon ground truth. So that was about the inductive and deductive. So let us start. Let us see some more examples on the deductive approach. So the deductive approach starts with an existing theory. Here I have given you three examples. First example is what? Low cost airlines always have delays. Second, all dogs have fleas. Third, all biological life depends on water to exist. These three theories are not linked to each other. These are three separate examples. So let us see the first example. Low cost airlines always have delays. So this starts with a theory. The theory, deductive starts with a theory. The first theory says what? Yes, all the low cost airlines, they always have delays. This is the theory. The theory once made, now the hypothesis will be formulated based upon the theory. So, what is the hypothesis? Since the theory is low cost airlines always have delays. So, the hypothesis is if passengers fly with a low cost airline, then they will always experience delay. This is the hypothesis. So, based upon the theory and the hypothesis, the researcher will start collecting data to test his hypothesis. So, what data he will collect? He will collect flight data of low cost airlines. So now let us see the analysis. Now, for example, if 5 out of 100 flights they are not delayed, then what we will say? We will reject this hypothesis. We will reject this hypothesis. Why we will reject this hypothesis? Because see over here what it says. Always have delays. Always. This is the word. Always have delays. But here we are seeing that 5 they did not make delay. That is why we will negate this, reject this hypothesis. Similarly, if we go through this, all dogs have fleas. That if all dogs have fleas, then what will be the hypothesis? That all pet dogs will also have fleas, because since all dogs have fleas, so the hypothesis will be all pet dogs will also have fleas. Then how the collection of the data will be there? That we will have to test all the dogs in the buildings to see whether or not they have fleas or not. Now, for example, that if 20 dogs are tested and in 2010 they did not have flea, then we will reject the hypothesis. Similarly, all biological life depends on water to exist. All biological life depends on water to exist. If this is the theory, then the hypothesis will be what? All land mammals, because land mammals are also biological life, they depend on water to exist. How we will collect data by studying all the land mammals. Now if we see that all land mammal species that depend on water, so since we are seeing that all land mammals are depending on water, so we support the hypothesis. So this is how the deductive approach works. So there is the limitation is that if all the premises, this premise are true, if all the premises are true, then only we can say that the conclusion is true. So if any one of the premise is not true, is false, then the rest of the theory is also false. So this is the deductive approach. Let us see the inductive approach. Same way, here but we don't have the theory at first. Here it is observed. It is just observed that okay, one low cost airline flight is delayed. It's just a random case is observed that okay, one low cost airline flight is delayed. Then a pattern to observe, to check a pattern, we have to do more observations. So we observe that another 20 flights from low cost, they have also been delayed. So when we find a pattern, first we see observe, then we find a pattern that yes, all the 20 flights have also been delayed. Then we come upon a theory that all the low cost airlines are having delays. But this is what this kind of an inductive approach, it cannot be proven. Why it cannot be proven? We have checked only 20 flights. Now what about the 21st flight? Now suppose we did not check the 21st flight. It can happen that the 21st flight did not have delay. So if did not have delay, then how can we say that all the low cost flight is delayed? So if all of them experience a delay, then all the flights will be delayed. So, that means 21st, 22nd, 23rd, etc. N number of flights will be delayed if all the low cost flights are delayed. So over here, the more larger the data set, the more reliable is your conclusion. So you, and your conclusion can every time it can be proven wrong if you have a small number of data set. Now this deductive, as was said before, it is a top down approach. Why it is a top down approach? Because it is from general to specific. Here some while we are studying a general to specific, we study some specific phenomena, and these specific phenomena, these are studied in relation to the already established laws and theories, just like I had told you that I have been telling you till now. These are studied with already established laws and theories. And based upon the laws and theories, research objectives are derived. Based upon the objectives, hypothesis is made. Based upon the hypothesis, testing of the hypothesis is done. How it is done? By collecting and analyzing the various data. Once testing of the hypothesis is done, Then conclusion is drawn, whether to confirm or to reject the hypothesis. So this is called the top-down approach. So this begins with general ideas and then it comes to the last, the conclusion, wherein the idea is either rejected or it is accepted. Now in the bottom up, that is inductive. So inductive that do not have any theory. What it has various examples. How it comes through the various empirical observations, various scientific observations. It starts through various observations. It starts through the various empirical observations, through various scientific observations. So through the various scientific observation of a specific phenomena, just like in the previous slide we have seen through the airlines. It starts with scientific observation, empirical observation of 20 flights. It starts with that 20 flights, observing the flights, then starts with a pattern. So based upon that observation, the researcher will try to collect the various field studies to understand the various patterns. So based upon the patterns, then the hypothesis will be tested. So based upon that hypothesis, then the ultimate theory that yes, all the this thing low cost airlines have delays, etc. So these kinds of hypotheses will be derived. So this is also known as what? Hypothesis, observation, confirmation. So this is a bottom up approach.